Sitting here in Stetson, I see a room filled with memory and history. It's a room that would have been similar to something Williams' class of 1889 would have encountered when they were here as first years. There were 82 of them, and they were here to become doctors, lawyers, and ministers. They were here to preserve their family legacies. They were here to become Williams men. Among them was Gaius Charles Bolin, a man who would go on to become the college's first Black graduate. Born to parents who believed fiercely in the power of higher education, he was raised and educated in Poughkeepsie, New York. Certainly, it must have been difficult to be a Black student here surrounded by few others in a similar position. But the historical record indicates that Bolin chose to remember his time here differently. He enjoyed his classes in Latin and Greek, played football, and made many lifelong friends that he frequently reunited with as an alum. Nominated to smoke the class pipe for commencement, it seems pretty clear that he was well liked among his peers. When Bolin arrived to college, he knew that he would be a lawyer. What he might not have been aware of was his future as an advocate for racial justice and an activist in his own right. Williams would be just the first step in realizing his goal.
So when Gaius was born, I believe he's one of 13 children, and his family has been in the area for 200 years. And his father was very committed to education. He really believed that his son should go to college. Gaius graduates high school with very good marks. He is sent to a prep school where he spends 2 years. He graduates top of his class of this prep school. And the headmaster of this prep school had actually gone to Williams. And we don't know why Gaius is sent to Williams, if it is because he's the top of his class or because the headmaster from his prep school believes that it's time for Williams to make a change. But that's why Gaius gets sent to Williams.
I can't imagine what it's like to not have any history at post-high school education and landing on a campus that's full of people that don't look like you.
He is a Northerner, and that does make it easier for him to come to Williams. The perception of Southern Blacks is that they are not ready yet for American society, for an industrial society. But Bolin was from Poughkeepsie, which meant that he was very familiar with New York. It meant that he probably knew a lot of different kinds of people, Black and white. He's from a pretty prestigious family, which means among African Americans that he had not been a slave and that he had had the privilege of education.
Well, one thing, he was prepared, perhaps more than some other students who may have contemplated coming to Williams, because in Poughkeepsie he was the product of a fully integrated setting in that town. As I mentioned, he went to a all-white high school, and so he was already accustomed to living as a minority in an overwhelmingly white environment. That didn't mean that he was not exposed to snubs and exclusion. But these were things about which he did not speak in subsequent years, and he chose to focus on those friendships that he was able to forge.
19th century college life was a lot different from the experience people have now. The scale is much smaller, and the class composition is different. So the kind of social experience people bring with them, the attitudes people bring with them, are somewhat different. It was clearly important that he was a very good athlete. That's a social activity, and so it meant that as an athlete, you want to be involved in sports activities that are social activities. And if people see that you are very good, they want to recruit you for their teams. And so clearly that was an important factor in his being accepted here, and more than accepted, in becoming popular.
After graduation, Bolin returned to Poughkeepsie and studied law under Fred E. Ackerman, a local attorney. 2 years later, he was admitted to the bar, but in between practicing, he found time for love. In 1899, he married Matilda Emery, a white Irish woman, and together they had 4 children. One of his daughters, Jane, would attend Wellesley and then Yale Law School, following in her father's footsteps to become another trailblazer. In 1939, she became the first African-American female judge in the country. His grandson, Lionel, would not only be a graduate of Williams in 1948, but would also become a trustee of the college. Gaius lived long enough to see Lionel become a first year.
He was not blind, however, to the ongoing issues of racial discrimination in the nation at large, and particularly in New York State, and more specifically in the locale of Poughkeepsie and the Mid-Hudson region.
And then as a lawyer, the community would have expected him to step up in race relations. He probably was considered a race man, someone who speaks publicly for the race, and someone in his way who protests poor treatment of African Americans. I understand he started the NAACP chapter in Poughkeepsie, which, by the way, is still active.
Williams College is a place that we have a lot of history. It's always a place that is in my consciousness. I wanted her to see it. I kind of envisioned that maybe she would go there one day. But I wanted her just to be aware of the college that her great-great-grandfather went to.
I think that once I made the decision to go to Williams, it felt right because of the family legacy. And the same thing happened when I applied to law school. I was really torn about where I wanted to go. And the minute I made the decision to go to Yale, where Jane Bolin went, I felt good about it. I felt like it was both, there was a path laid out, but also that there was a really high bar that was going to keep me pushing forward.
Williams in 2016 has a student body that would be unrecognizable to people who were here in Gaius Bolin's day. He was someone who came to the college and was successful here in ways that must have been enormously challenging for someone who was the first African American to be here. Part of why Gaius Bolin paved the way for so many others was his own very positive way of talking about his time here after he left. And that couldn't have been easy, because there's no question that things must have happened to him here that would horrify anyone who really knew the story. But I think he understood that he was part of something bigger, and that the greatest gift he could give to Williams would be his family legacy and the legacy of a student body that really was going to look very different than the one that he was here with.
Gaius died a resident of Poughkeepsie, New York, at the age of 81 in April of 1946. On the 100th anniversary of his admission, after Black student protests and demands for greater faculty diversity, the college would name a fellowship in his honor. It's a move that Bolin probably would have recognized as one of many steps it would take to make the college a better place for Black students. A proud graduate of Williams, Bolin never ceased to name the importance of community in shaping his time while at the college, the significance of those relationships in his life after graduation, and his appreciation for having had those experiences as a Black man.